Hello everyone, welcome back to Strike Point Media. Today we're talking about something that's been dominating global headlines for years: Russia's ongoing war in Ukraine. But in 2026, the story isn't what it used to be. The world has changed, the players have shifted, and the so-called facts about this war are not as clear as many people think. In today's deep dive, we'll look at what's really happening behind the propaganda, the statistics, and the headlines. Because Russia's war, as we'll see, isn't what you think anymore. It's something far more complex, more fragile, and perhaps even more dangerous than ever before. Let's start with the big picture, the exterior. On the surface, Russia still projects power. The government releases videos of massive military drills, long missile convoys moving through the snow, and speeches that promise total victory. Russian state media proudly shows new recruits training with tanks and drones, insisting that Russia is as strong as ever. But the truth beneath this polished image tells a different story. Russia's economy, despite the bravado, is under increasing strain. Sanctions have closed off much of its access to Western markets and technology. The ruble has lost value multiple times, and inflation continues to erode the purchasing power of ordinary Russians. Everyday goods, from imported electronics to even some food items, are harder to find and more expensive than ever before. The defense budget remains enormous, but it comes at a cost. Over 40% of Russia's national budget now goes to military and defense-related spending. That means less money for healthcare, infrastructure, education, and public welfare. The government has tried to fill the gap by printing more money and forcing industries to shift toward military production. Factories that once made civilian goods are now producing artillery shells or armored vehicle parts. On the outside, that may look like mobilization and power. But economically, it's a sign of desperation, a shift from a balanced national economy to a war-driven one that survives only if the conflict continues. Inside the country, things are more tense than they appear. While the Kremlin maintains strict control over media and public discourse, discontent is simmering. Many families have lost sons, fathers, and brothers to the front lines. The exact casualty numbers are hidden, but even conservative Western estimates suggest that hundreds of thousands of Russian soldiers have been killed or wounded since 2022. Every small town in Russia now has its silent reminders, cemeteries with fresh graves, photos of young men in uniform, and mothers who no longer speak openly about what they've lost. Recruitment drives have extended to older men and rural areas, where economic hardship forces people to sign up for the military simply to survive. Meanwhile, thousands of educated young Russians have fled the country. IT professionals, engineers, doctors, leaving behind a brain drain that could haunt Russia for decades. So, when we look at the interior of Russia today, the image of a strong, united superpower begins to fade. It's replaced by a country stretched thin, fighting to maintain an image of dominance while struggling with the realities of isolation and exhaustion. Now, let's move to performance, how Russia's war machine is actually functioning. In early years, Russia's military was feared for its size and arsenal. It had one of the largest tank fleets in the world, vast reserves of artillery, and decades of battlefield experience. But the war in Ukraine exposed weaknesses that surprised even military analysts. The logistical failures, poor communication between units, outdated equipment, and lack of morale among soldiers all became painfully visible. Western intelligence and satellite imagery revealed convoys stuck for miles due to lack of fuel, command centers destroyed because of intercepted communications, and soldiers using outdated maps or faulty gear. By 2026, Russia has tried to adapt. They've upgraded their drone warfare, increased domestic production of missiles, and used partnerships with countries like Iran and North Korea to fill supply gaps. But even with those adjustments, the results are mixed. Ukraine's resilience and Western-backed intelligence have kept the front line largely stagnant. Russia has gained some ground in the east, but at a devastating cost. Every kilometer taken has come with thousands of casualties, tons of ammunition spent, and months of effort. Military experts often say Russia is advancing, but it's advancing into exhaustion. And here's the critical point: Russia's so-called performance in this war is deceptive. It's not about how many missiles they launch or how many cities they shell. It's about sustainability. How long can they maintain this tempo? Can they replace what's lost? Can they continue funding such an enormous military machine when the rest of the economy is bleeding? Those questions reveal the real scorecard of this war, and it's one that doesn't favor Russia in the long run. Let's talk about the safety features, or in this case, the dangers that come with this kind of sustained conflict. For Russia, the risks are everywhere. Economically, sanctions continue to suffocate key industries like oil, gas, and technology. Even though Russia sells energy to China and India, it does so at discounted prices, earning far less than before. That means less revenue to fund the war. Socially, the risks are internal unrest. The longer the war drags on, the harder it becomes to justify the sacrifices to the Russian people. Reports of desertions, low morale, and quiet protests have become more common, though most are quickly suppressed by the authorities. For Ukraine, the safety concerns are different, but just as severe. The country remains under constant threat from airstrikes, drone attacks, and missile barrages that target its power grid, cities, and infrastructure. The human toll has been enormous. Millions remain displaced, and reconstruction costs are astronomical. Yet Ukraine continues to adapt. Western aid, advanced air defenses, and a strong national spirit have prevented total collapse. But it's a fragile balance, one that depends heavily on continued Western support. If that support falters, Ukraine could find itself dangerously exposed. For the broader world, the safety issue is the potential for escalation. As NATO countries supply Ukraine with better weapons, and as Russia seeks new alliances in the Middle East and Asia, the conflict threatens to spill over into other regions economically, digitally, even militarily. Cyber attacks, disinformation campaigns, and proxy conflicts are all part of this modern battlefield. The safety mechanisms that kept the Cold War from boiling over are now being tested again, and one miscalculation could have global consequences. Now, let's look at Russia's original advantages, its unique selling points, the things that once made it appear unstoppable. Russia had manpower, massive weapon stockpiles, and a long tradition of military dominance. It had vast energy reserves, meaning it could use oil and gas as leverage against Europe. It had global influence, spreading across Asia, Africa, and the Middle East. For decades, those were the cornerstones of its power. But in 2026, each of those pillars is showing cracks. The manpower advantage is shrinking. Demographics are working against Russia. Its population is aging, birth rates are falling, and young men are either dying in war or leaving the country. That means fewer workers, fewer soldiers, and a shrinking labor force to keep the economy running. The weapon stockpiles that once seemed infinite have been severely depleted. Old Soviet-era tanks and artillery are being dragged out of storage, often in poor condition. Even Russian military bloggers admit that some of the equipment being sent to the front lines is decades old. Energy leverage, once Russia's greatest weapon, is weakening. Europe has largely weaned itself off Russian oil and gas. New energy routes and renewable projects have reduced dependency, cutting into Russia's biggest source of income. The country still sells to China and India, but those deals are made at a discount, leaving Moscow with smaller profits. Its global influence is also under strain. Many nations that once maintained neutral or friendly ties with Russia are now quietly distancing themselves. The cost of doing business with an internationally sanctioned nation is simply too high. So what does that mean? It means that the very foundation of Russia's power, its so-called selling points, are eroding. The war that was supposed to showcase its strength is now highlighting its weaknesses. It's exposing outdated systems, economic fragility, and an over-reliance on fear-based diplomacy. Now let's discuss the price of this war, not just in money, but in every sense. Financially, Russia is bleeding resources at a rate that's unsustainable. Billions of dollars are spent each month on ammunition, logistics, salaries, and repairs. The defense budget keeps growing, while public investment keeps shrinking. Infrastructure projects have been halted, healthcare systems are underfunded, and inflation continues to rise. Then comes the human price. Every war is paid for in blood, and this one is no exception. Russian families have buried sons, brothers, and fathers. The official numbers are hidden, but unofficial estimates suggest losses that rival some of the bloodiest conflicts of modern times. Ukrainian civilians, too, have paid dearly. Cities destroyed, families displaced, lives uprooted. Both nations are being scarred for generations to come. There's also the political price. Russia's international image has been damaged beyond repair in many parts of the world. Once considered a major power with strategic influence, it's now seen by many as an aggressor and a pariah. Diplomatic ties are strained and even long-time allies like China are treating Russia more as a junior partner than an equal. Internally, President Putin's government faces the challenge of maintaining control while the costs mount. The narrative of victory keeps the system stable, but if that illusion fades, unrest could follow. And finally, there's the strategic price, the long-term cost of choosing war over progress. By focusing its economy and society around conflict, Russia risks falling behind technologically and economically. Innovation has slowed, foreign investment has vanished, and its next generation of talent is leaving. The same resources that could have been used to build a modern, diversified economy are being poured into missiles and tanks. It's a trade-off that might secure short-term pride but threatens long-term decline. When you put all this together, the conclusion becomes clear. Russia's war isn't what it looks like anymore. In 2022, it was a story of shock and dominance, a superpower moving against a smaller neighbor. By 2026, it's a story of fatigue, of limits, and of unexpected resilience from Ukraine and its allies. The world has adapted, and Russia's initial advantages have turned into liabilities. The war that was meant to strengthen Russia's global position is slowly weakening it from within. For Ukraine, the fight remains existential. Its survival depends on continued support and its own determination. For the rest of the world, this conflict serves as a warning, a reminder that modern wars are not just fought with bullets and bombs, but with information, technology, and economics. Every battle now plays out not only on the ground but also online, in markets, and in the minds of people across the globe. So as we stand in 2026, the message is simple: don't believe the outdated narratives. The truth is far more complex. Russia's war machine is still powerful, but it's running on fumes. Its victories are shallow, its costs are deep, and its future is uncertain. The world is watching, the balance is shifting, and the era of unchecked Russian dominance is fading fast. If you've been following this conflict and still think Russia is winning, look again not at the headlines, but at the numbers, the cracks, and the consequences. Because the reality of 2026 shows a different story, one where pride clashes with reality, and where the supposed victor might be paying the highest price of all. Thank you for watching Strike Point Media. If you found this analysis insightful, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, because the story isn't over yet. We'll be here to break down every new twist, every update, and every hidden truth behind the headlines. Stay sharp, stay informed, and we'll see you in the next one.